Welcome to the PIO podcast. I am your host, Robert Tornabene. I have been a PIO for over 11 years with 27 years of law enforcement background. Welcome to season 2 of the PIO podcast. I am working hard to bring you the very most diverse crowd of subject matter experts in the public sector field. You can help grow the podcast by sharing it with friends and colleagues. Please give the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you listen to. So sit back and enjoy our next episode. Good afternoon. Today on the PIO podcast, we have Jonathan Baxter. He is the Public Information Officer for the San Francisco Fire Department. He's a lieutenant by rank. Is that still correct?
That's correct.
Welcome aboard, Jonathan. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be a participant and actually honored to be a participant on your show.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So you had a kind of a roundabout way of getting into the fire service. From what I've been reading about you, you actually started out in the law enforcement community. So can you kind of give me a little bit about your background?
Yeah, well, I grew up in Central California in a small town, Paso, Robles, California, and was very interested in law enforcement and the Explorer Cadet program, and quickly was able to get myself integrated into that program at the age of 14. And looking back now, if any of the officers who are more than likely retired by now, I apologize for being that guy that would show up on every weekend to do ride-alongs and inject myself into everything so that I could learn the industry well before being an adult, which throughout this podcast you'll probably see has definitely helped form my ability to provide services with a really detailed, educated format. The Explorer program there was strictly law enforcement, but again, some of my first introductions throughout ride-alongs with that program were traumatic events, collisions, fires, and was able to plug myself into doing ride-alongs with San Luis Ambulance, which is a private ambulance company. And to this date, I follow that program and that company, and it's probably one of the best most professional private ambulance companies that I've had the privilege of being a participant in. A paramedic by the name of Debbie Gassett took me under her wings and allowed me to do ride-alongs under the auspice of the Explorer program. And that really brought in a huge interest in basically helping people in the well-rounded public safety realm that's out there, that's not just law enforcement specific. So when I graduated high school at age 17, I had already taken my EMT program. I was able to get certified as an EMT shortly after my 18th birthday. Was hired with that company as an EMT, as well as with what's known as Peninsula Paramedics in Monterey County. And I really wanted to go into the law route. I wanted to go into the police department, but at the time they would not even consider you unless you were 21 years old. It's changed a little bit now. So jumped into the EMS realm full force, was quickly asked to join a paramedic program in Carmel. And what a horrible place to take paramedic school, and I'll tell you that much, Carmel, California. And was able to graduate through that program and get hired on as a paramedic just prior to my 19th birthday. And shortly after that, I was at the EMSA in Bakersfield, California, as I was working for then Golden Empire Ambulance as a paramedic. And I saw a application for Sonoma City Fire Department. And I was like, cool, let me fill this thing out. And lo and behold, there went my career as a firefighter paramedic. Started my career off in the fire service with the Sonoma City Fire Department. And again, that wasn't enough. So I became it's called a sleeper program, which is a in-house firefighter for a volunteer fire department, Glen Ellen Fire. So as I was working full time as a firefighter, when I went home, I continued to work as a firefighter and paramedic with that volunteer company. And if that wasn't enough, I needed more excitement, the adrenaline rush of public safety. So anybody who was a paramedic in the early 90s will recall that there was not enough paramedics and everybody was asking for paramedics. So you basically could throw your card out there. And I went to work part-time as a paramedic with Carmel Regional Ambulance, which was awesome because you get to fly on the Camp Roberts helicopter if you had any trauma patients. Guerneville Fire, Bodega Bay Fire and Rescue doing surf rescues. And the whole time it was just fun. It was so much fun to be able to have the experience and the opportunity to help people when they were in need. But later on in my life, all those experiences have really helped form who I am now and giving me the abilities to provide care and reasoning to incidences that we have as a PIO. Early 2000, fast forwarding, got my degree in fire science and in criminal justice, and went to.
Hey, hold on, let me interrupt you real quick. Why the dual degree there?
My interest was still in law enforcement.
Okay.
Even going through here, it was still in law enforcement, and was wanted to go into maybe fire investigations, and the fast track to the fire service, staying with Sonoma City Fire Department as a firefighter paramedic, lateraling over to the city of Hayward Fire Department. Anybody from Hayward here? One of my hardest decisions was leaving Hayward to go into San Francisco. What a great group of professionals at the Hayward Fire Department with a very high set standard of expectations for any of their employees. Learned a lot in not only their fire academy, but also in their fire department. It's the first time I got injured on a fire and the flashover and the camaraderie and the care that you get when that happens is something that we don't want, because we're, number one, in our profession, we don't view ourselves as heroic, but we also don't view ourselves as victims. So being able to witness that firsthand has definitely been able to give me a good knowledge base when I have reported on our line of duty deaths as a PIO and our line of duty injuries as a PIO, to make sure that the individual we're talking about is not highlighted in a way that I know we don't want to be highlighted in. The media wants terminology, but we have to take care of our personnel on our own. In early 2000, I got hit by a car on the inevitable number one no-no when you're a paramedic is don't get a motorcycle. So what did I do? I got a motorcycle, and what happened is, yes, I got in an accident. And as I'm sitting on a street corner with my clavicle sticking out of my skin, this police officer who was awesome, he sits there and goes, "What's this endorsement on your license?" I go, "I'm a firefighter." And he just laid into me. He broke the mindset of I am in pain, I'm hurting. And we were actually just sitting there laughing, all the way to the hospital. And unbeknownst to me, he submitted my name and application to become a reserve with that police department, citing that I would have plenty of time for the next 6 months while I'm recovering to be able to pursue the knowledge base to get in as a reserve with that. And that was the City of Pleasanton Police Department. And what a great department that was, is, I was able to juggle my full-time career as a now San Francisco firefighter, as well as taking the classes off duty to meet the criteria for that reserve program. Loved it so much. I was spending all my off days at that department, learning and absorbing the knowledge base, the professionalism, the skill traits that department had, that I decided to put myself through what's known as the full-time extended academy, which is every weekend and 2 Wednesday evenings for an entire year. So you basically come out of it with a basic postgraduate certificate for law enforcement. And that's when I got headhunted from a couple of departments, one of them being the Menlo Park Police Department in the Peninsula, to hire me as a permanent part-time reserve police officer, which is a paid position with them. And I'm going to give a name shout out to paramedic Beth Goudreau, who currently works for the San Francisco Fire Department. She was my paramedic counterpart at Station 18 during this academy phase and this transition phase, and covered all of my days. Of course, I paid her back on weekends and days that we do shift trades on, but without her assistance and her devotion to allowing me to do this, it probably would not have been attainable. So a huge shout out for her being instrumental in me being able to move in my career. And that leads to where I'm at now, 32 years in the fire and EMS service, just embarking on my 20 collateral year in law enforcement. And my 6th year starting last month as a professional public information officer for the San Francisco Fire Department.
Outstanding. So let's talk about how you got the word, or actually how you got voluntold or volunteered for the PIO position with SFFD.
Yes. So taking classes is instrumental, and I encourage everybody to take any and all classes, no matter what your reasonings are. And there's many reasons out there. It's to enhance your abilities. Other reasons are so you can get a tax break when you're on vacation at a wonderful location like San Diego or Hawaii. So I took those classes, and one of those classes was public information officer, and we had a conversation with our administrative officer, Mindy Talmadge, and she was like, "Hey, I see you took these PIO classes." I said, "Yeah, I did." She goes, "Would you be interested in being the PIO?" I was, I don't know, maybe. Well, a couple of weeks go by and I'm working at Engine One, which is at the time was the busiest engine company in America. And we get subjected to a lot of interesting calls, which leave us vulnerable for speculative community comments. So when I get the phone call at 8 o'clock in the morning, "Hey, you need to come have a meeting with the chief at 10 o'clock. Of course, for 2 hours, me and the entire crew are going through all the logbooks to figure out what call it is that we got in trouble for. So we should show up for the meeting, and it's not to be in trouble. It's, "Hey, we want you to be the PIO for the San Francisco Fire Department." And what's important to realize is that until this point, we did not have a full-time single function PIO for the San Francisco Fire Department.
Whose responsibility was it prior to that?
Mindy Talmadge had that as one of her dozen tertiary duties. So
okay.
It was basically, and God bless her, she since has retired. I don't know how she did this job on top of all her other job duties. She's the master of being able to juggle many job tasks and duties and responsibilities, and a department that you would think would have the funding and the availability to do with it. When you get into these larger departments, that's not necessarily the case. So you have to become creative and find out, as an administrator, how do we cover these roles and get these roles to the communities that we serve. In 2015, we had a couple of items that popped up. And first of all, we were embarking in on the Super Bowl 50, and that was going to require some good media attention. We had speculative gentrification issues going on with a lot of fires that we had. We had a lot of fires occurring in 2015, 16, 17 era.
Was that in the Mission District? Is that correct?
Yeah, the 29th and Mission Street was actually one of my first big fires that after I'll backtrack a little bit to my meeting with the chief and headquarters, and they asked me to be the PIO, and they cited that I had taken a class, and I had a lot of experience in both being a paramedic, a firefighter, and a police officer. I was currently on the lieutenant's list. I had not yet been promoted through a civil service test to the rank of lieutenant. So there's a lot of things that were going through my mind when I was asked to do that. And I professionally asked the chief, and again, my mindset is I firmly believe in the paramilitary organization. And when the head of your organization, the chief of department, asks you to do something, you don't say no. You say, yes, ma'am, let me look into it. And that's basically what I did. I was like, I'd love to research this. Can you give me 24 hours to do my research? And to the PIOs in, LA City, LA County Fire, Fresno Fire, New York, to name a few, Sacramento City, the phone calls I got afterwards, just asking, what do I need for this position? We've never had a position. I have to design an actual PIO position for this department and for me, and make sure that I'm the right fit for the department and the department's needs are the right fit for me. And I put a list together, and one of the PIOs said to me, he goes, if your chief gives you half of this list, he goes, take the job, you'll be able to do the job. If the chief gives you less than half of this list, you're not going to be able to, and more importantly, nobody else will be able to do this job.
How big was the list?
It was a 2-page list. A 2-page list. And we went through that list, and I got about 90, pretty much everything on that list. There was a couple of things that we had to downsize a little bit, but I still count that as being given. And was given full anonymity to go out and do the job, including starting our social media presence for the department, as well as community outreach and engagements, which at the time the department was definitely lacking in, and a huge media presence that we never had before. I mean, we went from zero social media to date. We have 30,000 followers on Twitter, a little over, I believe it's 17,000 people on Instagram, 100,000 people on Facebook. And these are important because it allows you to get the right information to the right people at the right time, whether it's emergency or just what is the department doing for that. So, these were important factors, and fast tracking it past that meeting now to, what we needed to involve our department in for the role of public information officer was a number of things. And you cited the Mission Street fire. So if any of you have the ability to look up, the Mission Street fire on 29th and Mission, it was a great alarm fire, and we did have some fatalities, and we had some rescues. We had shelter in place orders. We had Red Cross coming. We had political aspects as well as community aspects, mentioning that this was a gentrification and or an arson case. All these questions are coming at us at one point, and I realized beforehand that I would not be able to run a big incident by myself, and had done pre-established relationships with our PIOs, with the police department and the sheriff's department, emergency management department, and the mayor's office. And I started making phone calls. And the first phone call I made was to the PIO at the time, now Chief of Staff, Francis Zamora, for San Francisco Department of Emergency Management. Hey, Francis, I need some help on this incident. And he was like, I'm there, because this is something that never was done before. It's like the fire department was self-sustaining, and we didn't ask outside for help, and I needed help. And able to do this correctly, I needed the help. I had about 15 cameras already on site, and I needed to make sure that they were corralled and they weren't going into the danger zone. And talking to people that would give a perspective that might not be a factual perspective, although very important to have that perspective, we also need to make sure that it's backed up with the facts. So Francis was able to come out. San Francisco Police Department, God bless them and their PIOs, were able to come out. Sergeant Andrzejczyk, Michael Andrzejczyk, was one of the first ones from the police department to show up. And it's, what do you need? And I was like, I need media staging. Francis, can you take media staging? Yes, absolutely. Police department. And what do you need? He goes, I need someone to get intel. What's being said about this fire? What do we need to look at? What do we need to address? What are the concerns? In addition to that, I need a shelter in place map to put out a Twitter message as well as an alert SF message, which is our community alert system, for those who are being affected by the massive amount of smoke drift that's going through here. And we were able to quickly address that. And then the mayor's PIO, and granted, I'm a brand new PIO. And at the time, the mayor's PIO comes up, and it's like, oh my God, the president of the United States is here. That's my mindset. Make sure I'm looking good. She's going to want to have a transfer of command. It's going to be her show. And it was Deidre Hussey at the time, and she came up and she goes, Jonathan, you're doing a great job. What do you need? And I said, well, you're the mayor. You tell me what you want. And she goes, well, you run the show. You tell me what you need, and I'll give you the political issues that we may have to address. And she sat back in the background, and she really was such an instrumental tool in that fire to make sure that we were getting the right information based off of rumors and politically pushed information that was going out, and correcting it almost immediately, whether it was through social media or through the traditional media, and then actually having the set up media locations during that incident. And that really formed the way that we do business moving forward. It worked. Everything worked. There was definitely rooms for improvement on everything, but the format worked. And we got such positive reinforcement from the professional newscasters, the reporters, community groups from just that one incident. We knew that this was something we cannot back down on. It's something that we need to build upon and continue to build upon.
So Jonathan, just real quickly, that was not anything planned where you had joint agreements with the police department, PIO, your Office of Emergency Management. There was no like formal backup agreements or anything like that, correct?
Yeah, it was correct. It was all based off going old school, taking somebody out for coffee, sitting down with them, asking them what do they need. If there was a big emergency, what would I need? What are your capabilities? What's your training experience? How can I learn from you, and how can you learn from me? And how can we both grow together in this profession? And I feel very fortunate, not only being in San Francisco, but the entire Bay Area as it relates to public information. We have such a great group of dedicated public information professionals throughout the Bay Area, including San Francisco, that it's just the right time to build upon this program, which we started back in 2015. And now we've escalated it to this robust system, which, and I don't want to fast forward too much, that system and those relationships really helped us be one of the #1 leading agencies throughout the pandemic, with being able to get information out to our public and how we address a international disaster such as this pandemic we saw.
Outstanding. So I want to go to a very specific part of your background, and that is your efforts in community outreach and public ed. I saw that you received an award in 2019 from Firehouse Magazine. It was a community service award, correct?
That is correct. And to Firehouse Magazine and to the individuals who elected me for that and submitted me for that, I can't say thank you enough. Again, we don't ask for nor expect to have praise for anything we do, but when we do get it, especially from such a huge industry standard such as Firehouse Magazine, it makes a difference. I mean, you see the smile on my face as we're talking right now. I was very happy to receive that. I
bet. So let's talk about the why you received it. You don't need to go into who nominated you, but what did you do? What did your agency do? What were you personally involved in?
Well, this was a great question. I'm glad that you asked it. When we started off a few minutes ago and rounding off my career and my career experiences and how they really affected how I do things now, I firsthand saw the effects of non-educated public. I firsthand saw the effects of politicians or administrators not knowing the why, just wanting the this needs to be done or this can't be done. It's like, well, we need to have the why that's in there. And the why will be the child who you have to tell the parent passed away from a drunk driver. The why would be the child who drowned in a pool, and you would have to tell the parents without making them feel like it was their fault. And you can apply those two scenarios to car fires, to house fires, to landslides, to disasters. The key denominator is preventable injuries, preventable property loss. And we had, at the time, based off of our statistics in San Francisco, roughly 2,000 people being physically touched by our fire department with in-person education per year. And we're a city of almost 1 million people. At nighttime, doubled or tripled during the daytime. We needed to do better than that. So we started to go out and talk to community groups was my first basis. It's like, what do you expect of your fire department? What's your view and your opinions of the fire department? I need to know what you view of me. Am I doing good? And when I say I'm talking about my fire department, San Francisco Fire, not me, Jonathan Baxter. And we got a lot of praise and we got a lot of negativity. And the more praise we got, and the more comfortable we got talking with how can we build upon this problem, more negativity came out, which is people starting to trust you. We needed to build that trust. And once we started to get that negativity, that's when we can start the building blocks. What do we need to do for the public? We need to be able to take public education and outreach to them, not expect them to come to us. Because in a city our size, with all the limitations we have in immune systems and a huge community that doesn't drive because of that immune system, it's irresponsible to ask somebody to spend an hour on a bus to get to a education ceremony at a set location. So the first thing we did after talking to community groups, after talking to neighborhood groups, after talking to politicians, and learning from their aides what the politicians required, we started what we first started calling battalion safety drills. And the first year we did battalion safety drills was in 2016, and we would do a big safety function open to the public for 4 hours at the battalion house in one of each of our 10 battalions. So we would cover 10 months by doing battalion houses, and then in October we would not have a battalion house because it was fire prevention week. So we would pick a set location for that. And then in May, because it's EMS week, we would do the same thing. We would have a set location that's not a battalion house. So essentially we covered all 12 months with one specific big function. And that worked really good. However, we're realizing that some of the fire stations, some of the battalion firehouses are in these neighborhood areas. They're off the grid. There's not a lot of foot traffic. And I use the example of our first battalion safety fair was in Battalion 1, which is right in the heart of Chinatown. And we were overwhelmed with people. I mean, we ran out of everything right at the 4-hour marks. I mean, so we planned well, but boy, I did not expect we were going to get that type of a showing. The very next one was out in the neighborhood group, and there wasn't the foot traffic, and I had low numbers. We still had good numbers. I believe it was in the hundreds for a neighborhood area, but it was nowhere near the amount of people we had in the foot traffic for the first one. So again, that pre-established relationships with community groups, we had a city youth coalition, CYC, and they had funds available to go out and get community buildings, basically a community center to hold these on. So we expanded on the second year. Instead of having them at battalion houses, we did it at a community center. So we would bring the fire engines to the community center. We brought fire prevention and education to do a 1-hour presentation to those. So it was set. So within that 4-hour period, you can sit in a room for an hour and get a whole presentation on fire safety. We had stop the bleed training. We had hand-only CPR training. We had, juvenile fire setting and juvenile fire awareness. So basically kids can come up to a firefighter in their SCBA all in one general location. And what made these things extremely successful, in my point, number one, was having a set of diverse volunteers from our City College Fire Science Academy coming in to assist us, as well as our auxiliary fire system known as the Fire Reserves in San Francisco.
So Jonathan, let me go back real quickly. You're a one-person operation, correct?
Yeah, so I'm actually 20 years old, but as you can see, I look like I'm 60 right now.
So with it being a single person operation, you're coordinating all this with these youth groups and the different battalions within the command of the fire department.
Yeah, that's correct. And you have to take the self-initiative. The commercials back about 5 years ago, what would the world be like if firefighters ran the government? It's a great analogy just to sit back and realize, we can do whatever we put our minds to. but we just have to do it. You can't sit back and have a great idea and go, okay, hey, somebody else do this idea. It's not going to work. You got to take it. You got to have the support of your upper management, which I did, and you have to run with it. And that takes a lot of time. I'll throw out a number here that's astonishing. In my 6 years of being the PIO, I have 6,000 hours of what we will call volunteer hours, on top of your regular duties. And that's nothing to say, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. Look how devoted he is. These are the things that are necessary for you as a sworn public servant, sworn to protect and serve your community at the best of your abilities. That's required at some times to go out and make sure that you can make a difference. These safety fairs work, and I was justified and vindicated basically back in I think it was 2019. And we had a safety fair at our Station 19, which covers one of our university districts. And there's a lot of large high-rise housing areas for low income as well as student housing. And at that safety fair, I had this lady come up to me, and she hovered around me for about an hour, and she was taking all the training. She wanted me to personally do the hands-only CPR with her and personally do the stop the bleed. And then we went to the fire extinguisher, where we simulate them using a fire extinguisher. And in that simulation, we have a smoke alarm go off, so to emphasize the importance of an escape plan and knowing what the sound is. And she goes, oh my God. She goes, my building has these like every other day, which is true in that area. It's a college, community as well as low income community. And we had a lot of cooking fires or mischievous pulls for fire alarms. So yeah, we understand that these individuals are subjected to a lot of these fire alarms going off. And she told me, I stay in my apartment. I don't go. What's the big deal? And I told her, this is the big deal. And you can't make this up. At 4:00 the next morning, we get a greater alarm for that same district. I show up, there's a fire on, I want to say it was like the 7th or 8th floor in an apartment. The video that I could see going to the call shows, fire lapping out of the window, auto exposing up. And I get on scene, and our crews did a phenomenal job, which, I'm not gloating. They always do a great job. So when I showed up, everything that I expected to be done was done. There's no issues that I really have for the media. Collected my information. So I start to do an interview with Christian Captain, one of our Bay Area reporters. And right at the end of the interview, this lady in this night dress or nightgown, I see her just beelining like a bull. And in my mind, I can't see her face. I'm going, oh my God,
this is going.
Something happened. Something happened in this fire. I'm about to hear about it. There's a news camera here. They're going to hear the negativity. It's like, this is my PIO worst nightmare. What do I do? And she goes, Lieutenant Baxter, I did what you said. I heard the alarm and I got out. And then she goes, and I see who she is. And I go, oh, it's the lady from yesterday. And then she goes, the fire actually has smoke in my room. I probably would have had smoke inhalation or worse. Thank you. I actually left right when the alarm went off. And she said, I would not have done it if you didn't tell me this yesterday. And I got a big hug from this lady, and she was super excited. And, that's the only thing I need for all the work I've done previously and for all the work I do moving forward, because I know that one person has been positively affected. I'm sure there's many, many, many more, but that one person realized the importance of our safety material, absorbed that safety message, and then enacted the safety measures when it was needed to be enacted. So that's a life saved.
And at the same time, Jonathan, if you think about it, she's going to tell all kinds of people about what she learned and then how she did it the next day when a fire broke out below her apartment. So you're going to get that secondary education coming from a woman who didn't want to follow the rules before.
Exactly. Yes.
Outstanding. All right. So let me talk about one of your campaign efforts to raise awareness about water fatalities. You guys had a series of, you have water fatalities just by the nature of where you're at in the coastline, and that is something that happened. But because you were vigilant about starting to report it more and wanting to raise awareness, that caused a little bit of attention to be brought to the fatalities by legislators. So tell me about the benefit of educating the community once those legislators found that out.
Well, shockingly, I still am a rescue swimmer, but I was a rescue swimmer at Station 18, which was one of our coastal stations for years, and had actually conducted many surf rescues myself. And in all those years, I never knew what I learned as a PIO. And that is that Ocean Beach is one of, if not the most deadliest beaches in America. And I was like, there's no way, this can't be. So I got a meeting with our amazing partners at the Golden Gate National Recreation Area. Charlie Strickfadden is their PIO there right now. Great PIO, great person. Was able to talk with Brian Garcia from the National Weather Service. Again, another absolute amazing PIO for a national agency. And it was like, yes, this is a very dangerous beach, and if not the worst for fatalities. And we knew we had to do something. So we came up with a safety campaign on social media that was very new, infographics, using volunteers from our city college internship. So that's another program we started, as we started bringing in our city college fire students to do an administrative internship so that they can learn the fire service. Most times they do internships on a fire engine. There's a lot more to it. So I was fortunate to get the buy-in from my chief to bring interns in from city college fire program to do tertiary tasks, one of which at the very beginning was initiating and establishing safety materials, pamphlets and flyers and infograms to go out to the public in multiple languages on the dangers associated not only to the beach, but to our coastal access areas. And with that, I started to make sure I was responding to any report of a surf rescue. And it was, as a PIO, you see more of the human side and effects to a fatality than you do as a surf rescue swimmer or a paramedic or a firefighter or a police officer. Because as a PIO, you're staying with the family. You're going through the grieving process as they're waiting to see if we can find that child or that mom or that dad who we know has perished in the sea, but that hasn't been told to them, and then evaluating it into that. And I put some of those emotions into some of our media releases and into some of our media briefings that we had, and if we had a media conference, into some of our media conferences. And a politician quickly picked up on this and called my chief and said, why are we having all of these surf fatalities and surf rescues all of a sudden? It's like, it's not all of a sudden, sir. It's been going on for a while. We as a fire department just haven't had a PIO to highlight this, as well as the safety information to help reduce it. So that politician quickly formed a committee to look into this. As a result of that, we were able to get new surf rescue equipment as a direct result of public information going out to the right people at the right time, brought us new equipment, brought us new safety measures, got us into integrated responses with federal agencies, and we started to see a reduction in fatalities and a reduction in actual surf rescues. We still have a ton of what we call safety contacts. And a safety contacts is one of the national parks lifeguards or one of our surf rescue swimmers who is out on out in the rig. We'll see somebody that we know professionally. In 5 seconds, that person is going to get pulled out and it's going to be a rescue. So we'll go out and we'll do safety contacts, which essentially should be called a rescue, but we don't. And our rescues are when we actually have to physically swim, not walk, swim in the water and bring somebody out. And we're still in the high 300s for those, but our fatalities are definitely down for that. And the rescues that we're talking about are down. I had a family, I was out doing outreach at Ocean Beach with the handouts, just handing them out because it was a day that we knew, I believe it was just before Memorial Day weekend. It was going to be warm out. We were going to have high surf per the National Weather Service. And I was like, we need to go out and be proactive. So I had our crews out there, and I was out there handing this out. And there was this family with a couple of kids, and I handed it to them, and they said, yeah, we're from the Inland Empire. We're here for the weekend. And our hotel actually told us to come here because it's going to be great. And then we said, well, here's the information. And they said, well, sorry, kids, we're not going to do that. And we were able to give them other options. The beach is beautiful. You can stay here on the beach and watch it. You can go to these locations to get your feet wet, which is not here at Ocean Beach. It's around over on the bay. And these are all the other sites that you can go to. So we're not pulling away our tourism and the enjoyment of our wonderful beach and coastline, which, if you haven't been here, it is amazing. But we want you to do it safely. And by doing it safely, it means you have the knowledge backed up by the educational facts that we're providing to you. And they opted not to go into the water for that day. And that's one account of many that we've had throughout that initiative.
So Jonathan, were you, if I remember, as part of this initiative, one of the things that you came up with was a vast majority of the fatalities of some of the rescues were for people not from the Bay Area, the San Francisco area specifically. And you partnered with other municipalities to kind of share the messages. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. And this again is just being, it's being proactive, and it does take time. And it does require getting in contact with the right person. But once you get the right person, that's a pre-established relationship, whether it's a PIO, a chief of department, a media representative. So we realized that a number of our fatalities and rescues were people that are in the Inland Empire, the Sacramento Valley, Fresno, Bakersfield area. And understandably so. It's 110 degrees where they live. And it's 70 or 80 degrees in San Francisco with 50-degree water. Who wouldn't want to leave that temperature to come here and relax? But the safety messages that we had were not getting out to them. So the first step we did is we increased our foot traffic, our boots on the ground firefighters handing out materials on the beach, on the coastline. We worked with the Hotel Council, which covers all the hotels, and got our safety material to be on their electronic boards and pamphlets on their actual counters to give to people so that they were educated. No longer are they being told by a hotel staff member, oh yeah, the beach is great, go have fun. They're now going, yeah, the beaches are great, but here's some safety material to consider and some options to go to if you would like to choose other. And then it came to, how do we address the people where they live? So that if they're making their plans, that's going to require them to drive 2, 3, 4 hours to our location. Maybe that's not the best suit for them and their family based off of the information we can provide to them. So that meant reaching out to PIOs from areas in Sacramento and Fresno and Stanislaus County. The list goes on. In addition to those PIOs, sending our messages or retweeting our messages on social media platforms, it was asking our local stations. So you look at CBS, NBC, KPIX, CNN, they all have outlets outside of San Francisco. Can you please ask your affiliates to share our message? Please help us reduce, people being injured and even worse, losing their lives. And they did. And again, having the media as your friend, and I call them partners. I know a lot of PIOs like, oh my gosh, that's a scary word. Don't call them a partner. They're my partners. And I have a great relationship with my reporters. And I know the fine line of transparency of when to withhold stuff and then when to release it. But I also understand that saying no comment is digging a grave. And by not considering them your partner because they are, and being able to provide vital safety information, you're also digging your grave.
Yep, absolutely. So, Jonathan, can you talk about, and we'll kind of wrap this up, and then I'm going to go into some of the lighthearted questions here. How can agencies capitalize on connecting with community-based groups?
Well, the sky is the limit. That is the 100%er to make you successful in public safety, no matter what your position is, from the chief all the way down to a basic firefighter, is get to know your community, get to know your community groups. They will, and in my case, have provided you with language access, language transcripts, language services, both verbally and in infograms. They have provided you with valuable information on things that are occurring in their specific community that we may not be aware of. They will provide you with things that they're not happy with a certain fire engine or fire truck that did, but they didn't want to say anything, or they were going to say something publicly, but because you had that relationship, they call you first. And that saves you so much face value on bad media in having to react rather than be able to be proactive and engage in that community in making sure that they are seeing that their public servants are working for them. I've said in many seminars that if you have an administrator, a leader, no matter what their rank is, that inhibits you from having community access or community engagement, that person should be removed from that position. And I say that very effectively, and I'm not wavering on my words, because without that ability for a public servant to on their own engage with a member of the community, you're only hurting the entire organization. And by hurting the organization, it goes back twofold to the community, and that could potentially lead to property damage or death.
That's a great way to wrap it up. Thank you, Jonathan, for putting the dressing on that. Thank you. All right, let's go to some real quick rapid fire questions. Your favorite drink of choice?
Oh, Mountain Dew.
Do you have a guilty pleasure?
It's going to be chocolate.
You've got the chocolate, Ghirardelli chocolate right there.
I try to avoid that area of town.
What's a must-read book in your mind?
Boy, I've got a couple of must-read books. Change or Die is a must. It's a great book to actually learn a lot about how to evolve in life and how to self-absorb things that have happened to you, but also relate those to other people. And that's by I believe it's Alan. I'll probably butcher the last name. Deutschman, Deutschman. The Body Keeps the Score is a great book. Iron John is another great book. These are all self-help and a topic we probably didn't hit on, but it's, the PTSD and the emotions that go along being just a public servant, not alone a PIO. These are great books that I found recently that have really been able to give me a greater understanding of the why, the great question of why am I feeling this? Why is somebody else feeling this? Why is somebody else not feeling this? And these books have really helped that. And then the go-to that I think you have to reread and definitely applies to being a PIO is The Art of War. Even though it's a war sense book, boy, there's a lot of great tools in that book that you can apply to dealing with people in a PIO role.
I will add all of those to the show notes. So thank you very much. Excellent. All right. So what is if you could have coffee and sit down with a historic figure, who would you choose and why?
Oh boy. There are so many that I'd want to sit down with. I think first and foremost, Martin Luther King would definitely be one. And the why to that is, you're looking decades past where we are now, but we still have a lot of the problems that we had then. And a lot of it has to do with public service, police, fire. There's a lot of political things that Martin Luther King were addressing, but a lot of those political things were enforced by the uniform. And now you fast forward it to 2020, and there's this narrative and this speculative perspective on uniformed members of public safety that is inherently negative. And if you wear a uniform like myself, and I wear a police uniform, a paramedic uniform, and a fire uniform, and I'm able to see this wide perspective of community perception of each one of those uniforms, you can realize that a lot of it is speculative based off of what they're seeing or based off of what they're hearing on news or on outlets, not in person. So I would love to hear, if I had the chance to sit down with him and say, what tools can you give me to go out to all the diverse communities, no matter the color of the skin, no matter their gender or their sexuality, no matter their religious beliefs, and really understand what they require from me as a person, but also from me as a public servant. And I think that would really help round up my ability to even provide better services to the communities that we're currently serving.
Outstanding. So Jonathan, any final thoughts you'd like to add?
If anybody is considering being a PIO, we always joke and say, don't do it. Stay a firefighter or a police officer. It's a lot of work. It is by far the most rewarding part of my career journey. You get to meet a lot of great people. You get to influence and affect change. You get to address negativity and make it positive, and you get to expand on the positive things that happen in your agency. So if you have the ability to pursue that, even if it's by taking a few classes or actually making the career track, I would definitely encourage it.
Outstanding. And Jonathan, if people want to connect with you, how can they do that?
You can go to my LinkedIn page, Jonathan Baxter on LinkedIn. You can go to the fire department's Twitter site and DM me, which is at SFFD PIO. And my email address, I'll give it to you spelled out, is jonathan.baxter, and that's JONATHAN.BAXTER@sfgov.org.
And I will add all that into the show notes.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me.
Jonathan, thank you very much for coming on the show. And that is episode number 2. Jonathan Baxter, PIO from the San Francisco Fire Department. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you. Have a safe day.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you would like to contact the show, please email us at thepiopodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to get notified of the latest episode. If you are listening on a platform that allows reviews, please give us a review. We appreciate any review, good or bad. It helps us improve on each episode. Until next time, be safe.